Hey, Romeos.
Hey,
Romeos.
How are you?
Here we are.
Good morning. Well, Dominic, and how are you?
I'm depressed, dejected,
Why are you
and
depressed?
disgusted.
We're here for you.
Why are you depressed, dejected, and disgusted?
We will lift your spirits, my friend.
Triple D.
Because I can't believe that I live with Canadians are this dumb.
So you're
present company
reflecting.
excluded.
You're reflecting on the outcome of the Canadian elections.
I know I'm insulting a lot of people. Yes, exactly.
Present company excluded.
Yeah, can't believe it.
There you go.
Here you go.
Yes, Canadian elections.
Okay, so before we delve into the topic of Canadian elections, and more importantly, where Canada as a country goes from here, because I think looking in the rearview mirror is not very helpful, let's take a moment to welcome back our viewers and listeners.
Welcome, viewers and
Welcome.
listeners.
Hey everyone, welcome back.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks for liking and subscribing.
Okay, stop there, Naren. Stop while you're ahead. Stop.
Can we keep it clean today? No, we're not going to. No.
It's
My
Friday.
Tourette's just had.
Oh my goodness.
And the trend continues.
We do appreciate you joining us. We do appreciate the likes, and we sure would welcome more subscriptions.
Yeah, fucking do it.
In the comments.
Jesus Christ.
So,
Cheers.
So,
guys, I'm not going to ask
who's going to begin?
Aki to start because we may run 2 hours and not get a word in edgewise. But you just expressed some strong feelings, Dominic.
Yeah.
So I think you should get us started.
Well,
Consider this a free session.
sure.
You may need to consult a professional afterwards, but
Well,
we'll try and help.
I think I need one, really.
We'll console
I
him.
can't believe that after 10 years, lies, incompetence, corruption, as if nothing was, let's give them another mandate.
Yeah, one person changed.
Couldn't you say that about, I'm not saying the 10 years,
No.
but when you talk about corruptions, lies, and so on, couldn't you say that about virtually any government?
Yeah, of course. But, like this is equivalent to, let's say you have an employee who's been lying, who's been incompetent, who's been corrupt. You want to fire him. The day you want to fire him, he shows up with a new haircut. Oh, it's a different person. He's okay.
And you give him a promotion.
Exactly.
That's a bit of a stretch. That's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, it's quite, it's quite.
I kind of agree with him.
Look, Pat. I'm not saying that the Conservatives are the solution. Like I said, even if the Liberals were headed by God and put whatever mean-spirited historical figure as head of Conservative, nobody should have voted Liberal. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. I think regardless of ideology, we reached a point in our society where we seem to have zero tolerance for any viewpoint that differs from ours.
Well,
When it comes to politics.
Yeah, but he's talking about track record.
It goes beyond that, Pat. I understand. Look, I've supported like Jacques Chrétien, who was, that guy balanced the budget. He told people off when they were forcing him to have more women, represented. I supported him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about conservative or liberal. It's track record, like you said. Horrible. And then when they went for the leadership campaign, all those people were saying, well, all those policies were not my idea. They were Trudeau's, was the leader. Like,
They threw him under the bus.
Dishonest.
So I will say this, and then we'll have Noreen weigh in. I will say this. I'm listening to you, and I can't help but think that in many respects, the Conservatives in Canada are like the Democrats in the U.S. They tend to self-destruct. Because
Yeah.
seriously,
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's kind of true.
by any reasonable thought,
Yeah, he should have been
the
won in a landslide.
Liberals should not have won this election.
Yeah.
But they did.
well,
And I think they did in part because the Conservatives self-destructed. In fact, the Conservative leader, Poiliev, didn't even win his own riding.
well, there's 91 candidates.
Yeah, they fixed that one.
But somebody had to win, Dominic.
They fixed that. Look,
No, they didn't fix it.
Pat, are we going to mention also demographics? The Liberals have figured out you bring in 5 million immigrants, you give them free money, and they're in power forever. That's what it is. It's exactly what it is.
Okay. So interesting thoughts, and we'll come back to them. But I do want to make sure that we spend most of the conversation focused on how Canada moves forward.
Okay. So how Canada moves forward?
Well, no, but you had some thoughts about. You said you agreed with Dominic's viewpoint, and
Well, I have to, because I don't understand how someone cannot agree with logic. So logic is simple. You know, A equals B equals C, so A equals C. It has to be.
Not for the socialists.
Well, let's put the labels aside for a second, right? I'll try and hopefully rise above the fray, as it were, and just talk about the results over the past 10 years and the fact, I'm not making this up, the fact that everyone else in the party is still there. So everyone who was there for the past 10 years of all of the policies that they enacted, all of the laws that they enacted, all of the shit they did not build any meaningful pipelines when required. They did not do any of the exploration and expansion of exploration for minerals and any of the raw resources that we have as a country. We were always a petro country, a petro and resource rich country, and that's how we had a nice base of income that allowed us to have the social programs that we all want. We all want these social programs. Even Dominic, if we have the money, why wouldn't we have a great social safety net? But we need the money first. And we need to have an economy that runs, and we need to have a government that actually understands how the economy can prosper in this country by building the pipeline.
so it's interesting because I agree with virtually everything you've said, and that shouldn't come as a surprise because I think fundamentally we're both centrist, right? Tend to be perhaps fiscally conservative and socially progressive.
Liberal, exactly.
So that's not the surprising part. I guess what I react to is I don't think it's fair or appropriate to think or state that the people who voted this government into power are all idiots. I refuse.
didn't say that.
I refuse to. No, but you did talk about, logic has to prevail and so on.
Well, I didn't finish my point though.
Okay, by all means.
Right? So again, when I look at it logically, and when you look at the way this thing rolled out, you look 10 years of liberal rule and liberal policies, and it's as if they had a majority government in the end as well, because the NDP basically slid into them, and they became an NDP/liberal government, which allowed itself to run for multiple years as more of a majority
In
than a
that
minority.
order, NDP liberal.
Well, yes. So unfortunately,
Where did that get the NDP?
yeah, well, where they belong so it's amazing that the NDP was punished and liberals were not for the policies that the liberals enacted over the past 10 years.
So I don't think that's a fair representation of what transpired.
Well, again,
Let's put Quebec aside for a moment, because as far as provinces and territories are concerned, I think that Quebec has some unique characteristics that contributed to the outcome of this election.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But Ontario, which is the most important province as far as election outcomes, did punish the Liberals and rewarded the Conservatives.
but not enough.
Well, you say not enough. You say not enough only because the Conservatives lost and the Liberals won.
Yeah.
But were it not for Quebec, the Liberals would not be in power.
But
Okay.
So
Yes.
can I make one last?
And the country is very divided.
Well, again,
You have it's red colored at the extreme west and eastern parts of the country. It's pretty much blue in between, right? I won't speak about the north only because the degree of influence there is
they've got
not
like
as significant,
3
and
seats or something.
they have some very specific issues that tend to determine how they vote. But really, Ontario and Quebec generally decide the outcome of the elections. And in this case, I would say that Ontario clearly tried to punish the Liberals for their poor track record. And Quebec, for its very own reasons, went in an entirely different
Well, it's the
direction.
demographics. But let me make one last point. 4 months ago, the Liberals would have had a hard time being official party status.
potentially.
Yeah, I think that might be a stretch, but
No,
they would have been severely punished.
They were under 10.
Well, again, I mean,
Yeah. So
one person comes in,
maybe
and all
the
of a
word-
sudden he's the savior of
maybe
Canada.
the word idiot is not the right word, but it's along that spectrum.
So let's look at it. Let's look at it from another point of view. Let's look at the performance of the conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
There we go.
What do you mean? There you go.
Go.
But we're not looking forward though.
No,
Let's look
but you
forward.
guys addressed some.
Allow him a few minutes
You addressed some of the things that brought us to this point and to these election results. So can I do the same?
Okay.
Okay. So in the fall, when the Liberals were absolutely in free fall, what does the conservative leader decide to do? He decides to go after the Bloc Québécois and decides to go after the NDP in very specific campaigns. But this is a parliamentary system. If you are, especially as somebody who supposedly is a lifelong politician, one of the things that you should be able to do is understand how the parliament in this country works and how you need alliances, especially in a minority situation. But no, he knew better than everybody else. The arrogance was absolutely
How could
breathtaking.
he be an ally to the NDP?
So, not talking about being allied.
sorry.
You're talking about previous leaders and prime ministers who had the ability to build coalitions. So this is part of this. This is part of our political
conservative
system.
and NDP is not going to have a coalition.
You don't have to. Well, guys, it's very simple. You destroy the NDP, you see what happens to your vote. I mean, that's what prevented you from winning a conservative majority
That
conservative
I
government.
agree with
so
you.
what was the strategy there?
You got a screwed up
Then
system.
there is this is the leader that when the country was basically when our capital Ottawa was held hostage by these truckers. These agitators. He supported them as leader of the opposition. For a month, they held hostage our country, they jeopardized our trade deals.
When did that occur?
That occurred last year.
What? No, it didn't occur last year.
2020.
Yeah, like 5 years ago.
2020.
Okay. Wait a second, Aki, because let's not put everything into a pot. No, I'm not going to let you continue because I think facts matter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he committed an act of support that dates back 4 years. That's not what caused people to diminish the level of support, because if the election had been held 4 months ago,
Yeah, he would have been king.
he would have had an overwhelming majority.
But in this, but
it's got nothing to do with what occurred back then.
But the stage has changed. The game changed, and his arrogance and his dogma did not allow him to adjust.
Aki,
There's a
it
pattern
was all
here.
about Carney.
There's-
It wasn't about Poilievre.
There's a pattern here.
No, it was both.
There's a
It was
pattern
mostly
here.
about Carney.
Starting with
Come on. He was going to win 4 months ago.
Starting with the Ottawa blockade, there was a pattern here that Canadians saw. The Canadians were not happy with the Liberal government,
God.
but they also saw in this
kind of
guy.
bullshit is that?
They also saw. Well, I mean, he lost his seat anyway. They saw in this guy an extreme kind of conservatism. It wasn't the Canadian conservatism of a Stephen Harper or of a Brian Mulroney. This is an extreme type of conservatism, for better or for worse.
Aki, you're a political hack. You're this and you look at this every day. You think most Canadians give a shit about anything
Yes,
that you just said?
Character they do. When it comes to elections, character they do. All I'm saying is now when you look at those examples, and then you look at this campaign, starting off with like a complete no-brainer, no media with me. Why? Why no media with you? I mean, for people.
Maybe it's because he said publicly he's not going to fund the CBC.
This echoes Trump.
By the way, I was watching one of these programs during the before the election, and it's unbelievable how biased the talking heads were in the program.
Exactly.
At one point, this was early on, and I was watching CTV, which was a local channel. At one point, the Conservatives, because they started counting out east, and the Conservatives were ahead by like a large amount, and then one of them flipped, and the person who was supposed to be reporting on it showed relief and said, look, it went to the Liberals, like she was happy. What the hell are you doing as a reporter showing bias during a fucking?
That's a fair.
This was CTV.
No, but I think most of the mainstream media,
unbelievable,
were leaning in the same direction. The only thing I would say to that, Naren, is that most people today,
it's terrible,
aren't getting their news from the mainstream media.
Exactly,
That's another problem.
But it's terrible because
I'm not disagreeing with you. All I'm saying is I don't believe that that's what influenced the majority of people.
We said
so. I want to spend most of the time looking forward. I just want to weigh in on this whole issue. I think that Poilievre committed some strategic errors. So I question some of the strategists that he was working with and some of the advisors that were by his side, because I heard a whole lot of negativity coming out of his mouth. I didn't hear a lot of constructive comments. I didn't hear a lot of detail to really give Canadians confidence that he was going to act in a way that was going to be hugely beneficial for the majority of Canadians.
But
And what we end up with is a country that is completely divided along ideological lines today.
percentage-wise, you got more than anybody
Another-
conservative.
The previous conservative. Yeah.
Percentage-wise, you
Yeah.
can't deny that.
It
Well, to
doesn't
his
matter.
point-
That's
I
Dominic.
understand.
That's like Trump's argument in 2020 that he got more votes than any other candidate in presidential history. Oh yeah, by the way, except the guy who beat you. So it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Still, like
The NDP imploded.
No, we
There
also,
were where did that percentage go?
you
So
know,
imagine the NDP imploded because everyone was pissed off at them, or at least some people were pissed off at them for cropping up the government, and then they vote Liberal anyway.
No,
Yeah.
no, they didn't.
Unbelievable.
No, that's not true. I mean, some people, but most people, it imploded because most people were very concerned about the Trump threat, and they did not see the NDP as
Fair
having the ability to do anything on that.
Well, they can't do anything anyway. They wouldn't form government.
So this is why
I
the
think a
NDP
lot of people.
vote
I think a
went
lot
to
of people
Liberals.
got fed up as well with the nonsense that Singh was spewing.
yeah, exactly.
Complete loss of credibility and confidence.
It's going to be a musician.
So guys, let's
Yeah.
okay.
And then you take off his turban with his long flowing hair.
Yeah, on
All
TikTok.
those TikToks.
Yeah, no.
He's got nice hair, that guy.
Yeah, well,
Did it work? Did he get? I mean, how many views did he get?
I don't know. I would go right through.
I think it's a waste of our time and our viewers and
That's
listeners' time to
very
talk
much
about
an
Singh.
aside. Yeah.
Okay,
Ultra aside.
how does Canada move forward?
Good question.
You know what? I always felt I always had answers to almost everything right now.
Well, you better come up with an answer because if not, our listeners and viewers are going to have to listen to
I
Aki.
think
So
Personally,
So I have some answers.
personally, I don't
I have
think
some
I don't think Canada can be fixed.
Yeah. Not,
you cannot. You don't believe that
No.
Canada can be fixed.
No, cannot.
I disagree.
On what basis?
I disagree as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think because it's so far out there now that to fix it, you need a reset. And people are not willing to do that.
Who's not willing?
That's why they voted Liberal. They like their free money. They like,
Okay, so let's look at
Yeah.
let's look at the potential future. So Carney was elected basically by saying, "Hey, I'm going to be the one that can stand up to Trump, and I'm going to be the one that's going to now put the pipelines in place that this country needs. Economy first, economy number one. Canada strong. We're going to build the pipelines.
He
We're going
never
to go
said
after."
that. He never said about the pipelines. I never heard him.
He did.
He did.
He did. He supported the pipelines, the east-west pipelines.
Yeah.
He supported all of this stuff. So out of his mouth came all the right words. It's economy first. We're gonna drill, baby, drill. I didn't say that.
No, he didn't
But-
say that.
But we're gonna
Definitely not.
So mineral exploration, our uranium, for example, we have probably the world's number one uranium deposits. We don't go out, we don't do anything with them. We don't take advantage of the minerals and the resources that we have in
It's a
this
huge
country.
part of Quebec's economy.
Again, certain parts, certain things that are already done, yes, but there's a lot of stuff that we can do that we are not doing, that we need to start doing as a country so that we can have a tax input or we can have some money coming into our economy, which will allow us to alleviate the high level of taxes and support the social programs, again, that we all want.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to have a wonderful social safety net, free everything. It would be fantastic,
Let's
but
stop
we need the
harping
money.
on social
No,
programs.
hang
Can we
on.
just put the emphasis on a strong economy? We can agree on that.
So moving forward, if Carney actually does what he said he's going to do and support the economy properly, then I will be pleasantly surprised. I will shut my mouth. I'll say, okay, well, I guess we did the right thing. And Dominic, even you, if you see that the economy all of a sudden over the next 3-4 years starts to flourish, all of a sudden we've got increased revenue coming in.
Yeah.
They put the pipelines in
Yeah.
place. He puts together multilateral trade agreements with Europe, with China, with Japan, with everyone else.
It's the same bullshit Justin Trudeau said.
No, it's not.
No,
Same bullshit.
No.
If he does, I'm just saying if. If is a huge word. But if he manages to do some of this stuff and pull it through, then I'll say, okay, well, I guess Canada was right and I was wrong.
I don't think that's entirely fair
Why?
because some of the initiatives that you're referring to are not 2, 3, 4 year initiatives. How long would it take?
At least start it.
That I agree with, but you're not going to see the results because part
I
of
will.
part
Starting it is the result.
May I?
Yeah.
Go.
At a high level, part of the plan that he has laid out requires a significant amount of investment, i.e., spending. before we see any kind of return. So you may see some indicators, but you're not going to get any kind of return. He's talking about spending more than the Liberal government that Dominic was referring to moments ago
Exactly.
has spent. And that's an amount of debt that I think most Canadians are going to have a hard time wrapping their heads around.
Yeah, but
Now, I'm not saying that that's absolutely the wrong thing to do, but I would like to see some of the investments funded in large part through reductions in spending that are occurring elsewhere.
Yeah. And private
And through
partnerships.
much greater collaboration. Exactly.
well, to that point,
I agree with you. 100%.
To that point,
But he should know what the fuck he's doing.
Guy-
Well, he should know. I think that one of the first, so it's interesting because he talked at a very high level, and perhaps that's appropriate in a race. But for me, there was an awful lot of detail that was lacking around how he was going to do what he proposed. And now he's going to have to elaborate on how he's going to accomplish the things he committed to.
Yeah.
I believe the first thing he needs to do, because let's not forget that he's leading a minority government. So they don't have carte blanche.
They have the block. So whatever he does that's positive for Quebec.
And the NDP still.
That's what's positive for Quebec in the Bloc's mind is not what is in the best interest of Canada. And there, out of the starting gates, we have a fundamental issue. This idea that the Bloc is going to vote on issue by issue based on whether or not it is in the best interest of Quebecers is part of what's wrong with our political system.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay?
Agreed.
At the same time as you have Danielle Smith, who's the premier of Alberta, who has already on day one stated that if Carney is not prepared to act in a way that's going to allow Alberta and Albertans to flourish and prosper by exploiting the natural resources that they have been constrained in terms of their ability to exploit, then that's going to be a game changer, and she's going to ask Albertans to vote on whether or not they should remain part of Canada. And I don't think that's an idle threat, by the way.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Okay?
So
I think
So I
Carney-
think the first thing Carney needs to do is to ensure that his priorities are clear to the other federal parties, that he has a level of support required in order to drive those priorities forward, and to immediately meet with the premiers of the provinces in order to have a similar conversation. Where I agree with you wholeheartedly is that the priorities must be to leverage the vast and rich natural resources that are available to us in order to begin the process of building a strong and vibrant economy
Yeah.
that over the course of the next 15 to 25 years is going to heavily rely on oil and gas
Yep.
before we and other minerals, but primarily oil and gas, as a means to transition towards other areas of economic activity
They need the base.
that are going to give Canada confidence that it's not just about the next 15 to 25 years, but it's beyond. And in the process, lessen our dependency on America
Yeah.
and increase our collaboration and trade
With the rest of the world.
The rest of the world.
Yeah, and you need to get that oil and gas to the coastline so you can ship it everywhere.
100%.
Guys, this is exactly why he won this election, because he's considered to be, a responsible manager of an economy,
I'll be happy to be wrong.
right? So this is his trademark. So that's number one. Very importantly, your point about the need to when you make these investments, you also need to find savings and cut in expenses. He's already addressed that head on, and he pointed out that the 9% annual increase of the federal budget, that's gone. He's not going to tolerate that. That has to be cut back dramatically. So he's put that on the table. Interprovincial.
Whoa. Reducing the annual increase is not a
It's
decrease.
incredible. Yeah, I know.
Well,
It's not.
it's not okay. But it's a change. It's a change in policy, and it's a
A
change.
useless change.
It's insufficient.
Okay, all right.
It's not that it's useless.
It's a change in policy.
It's insufficient.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We will see. But the point is, we all agree. I mean, we all agree. This is why the man has this mandate. It's because he's looked at and he's considered to be a good economic manager.
He's going to be
Good
the
business
steward of
sense.
our economy.
Good business sense, right? We agree.
Let's see.
Okay.
Paul Martin.
So
was
as
that-
if that, and then it follows, if he is a strong, business manager,
I
has
hope
good
he
business
is.
sense,
I hope
then
he
these are the
is.
types of management
Yes.
moves that we expect in terms of controlling expenditures,
I wanna be
spending money
wrong.
wisely, and making strategic investments that are going to increase our aggregate wealth.
Yes, we
All
have
of
to
these
wait.
things.
We have to wait and see.
Right.
So does he have the courage, the political courage,
No.
to stop catering to the liberal base and to move his party closer to center
where were you?
Yes.
in
where it was.
order,
Yes.
in order to do what needs to be done to move our economy
I
forward?
don't
Yes.
think he does.
Well, that's what he's been saying.
That's who he is. He brought the Liberal Party back to the center.
That's what
No,
got him elected.
they're not at the center.
They're not.
That's what got him elected.
They're still left.
100%. Exactly that got him elected because everyone thought, okay, he's moving this from liberal Trudeau, which was left of NDP,
Yeah.
let's and
was.
and wokeness brigade and all this shit
Exactly.
and reconciliation
Okay.
this and money thrown everywhere that and free injections
Very
like
good.
this, all this shit.
Continue, Laura.
Well, listen, all of this shit. Trans, everyone's a trans. Let's pay for everyone's surgery.
Right, again.
All this shit. Let's move all
Look at
this
the
aside.
forest, not the trees.
But all of this shit was why Trudeau was not going to get any votes. Sorry. And the reason why Carney got the votes is he came in as the new guy saying, hey, we're going to be centrist. Everyone in the country wants to be centrist.
Correct.
If he doesn't, everyone in the country wants... Canada's...
No, they don't.
Hey, Canada's like 2 degrees to left and right
Oh
of
my
center.
gosh! Of
Hey.
course they don't want to be centrist.
I think most Canadians
sorry,
consider themselves
Pat.
to be centrist.
Pat,
Most Canadians identify
80%
as
of the
centrist.
country is within 1, 2, 3 degrees of center. Okay? Some are a little bit more
most of the
liberal. some are
country-
more
Noran's right.
conservative.
Most of the country has a sense of entitlement.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
a different. That's a
No,
different
it's not
topic.
different because
From a
with
political-
entitlement come all these social programs
Exactly.
that keep printing money and doling out money and assistance and aid.
Okay, but
and-
it's not. But there's a lot of inefficient and unjustified government expenditures.
Taxpayers are
programs.
centrist.
Social programs. You want to put programs in that bag? We could talk about inefficiencies. We can talk about subsidies
let's
to
reel it back.
corporations.
Let's reel it
right.
back.
It's not just social programs. It's a big bag.
Let's
of
reel
inefficiency.
it back. Let's reel it back. Carney got elected because the words that were coming out of his mouth were more centrist. So
Exactly,
he was
Noran.
saying, hey, it makes sense to build pipelines and get this oil from Alberta to the coastline. Because that's just a centrist thing to say. It's normal. Now, I think he's going to have an easy time in Parliament if he starts going after these types of policies because the Conservatives will actually support him. The Conservatives aren't going to vote against a pipeline.
Right.
no.
So he's going to get most of Parliament between Liberal and Conservative. They've got almost all the seats.
I don't think that all of the obstacles to getting stuff done, necessary stuff done, is going to be encountered at the federal level.
True.
So I believe
Exactly.
that the biggest obstacles to success for Canada and for Carney's political future
Yeah, as a province.
is his ability to get support from the few provinces.
Yeah, the pain in the ass.
Well, whether you view them as a pain in the ass or not, they put their personal agenda
Above everything.
before the country.
Well,
Of course.
they behave like countries. You got 3 provinces.
Arguably, you
that
can say
behave like
Ontario.
countries.
Premier Doug Ford, you can say has shown that he's an exception maybe to that philosophy.
No, he's not.
Well, I think he's the best of the 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's not.
So, for the benefit of our viewers and listeners,
That would be Alberta, Quebec, and Ontario.
Exactly.
Ontario being the best of the 3 with regards to
essentially-
fiefdoms.
Essentially, that is Canada.
That's a good way of putting it.
That is Canada.
Yeah.
so
But that's what
do you
confederation
think-
is.
So let's look at, because I don't think Ontario will be an obstacle.
No.
If anything,
I agree.
I think many Conservatives will be upset at how willing Ford, the Premier of Ontario, will be in
Supporting Carney.
supporting and collaborating with the Liberal.
Well, he's a
Prime
pragmatist.
Minister.
That's why a pragmatist.
So I really think that for entirely different reasons, Alberta, and more importantly in my mind, Quebec, in the near term, are going to be hugely problematic for Carney.
Yeah.
Hugely.
Okay, but let's follow that logic. But Quebec, the Premier of Quebec, the current Premier of Quebec, is also somebody who describes himself as being a businessman, a reasonable
Well, he's
businessman.
He's not.
That's
He's not.
bullshit.
He's
So
not.
first of
He's
all,
not. You supported him.
He's done like dinner. He's done like dinner.
okay, hold
Okay,
on,
so
hold
he
on,
failed
hold
as well.
on.
So you're a businessman, sensible, leader,
Stop
premier,
it.
failed.
Stop it. Don't use words like reasonable, sensible, and businessman.
That's
I do
exactly
support-
how he presents himself.
I don't care how he presents himself. Can we look at the facts?
Yeah.
Well,
Can we
okay.
look at the facts?
No, but I want Dominic, because Dominic believes this is what Dominic
No,
believes.
the-
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Dominic believes you need more, business-minded people in government.
Yeah,
He's
Right.
not business minded. If he was business minded,
Let Dominic
his
answer.
number one priority would not be wage. No, if Dominic wants to speak, he'll speak. Don't put words in his mouth. You just.
I want
you
it, but
just made-
I opened the door and I'd like him to.
You just made some
step
statements.
in.
You just made some statements, and I'm reacting to those statements.
I think the Quebec
He would have not have waged war on the Anglophone community, which, by the way, is the default language globally, not in Canada, globally, for conducting business.
It's a different discussion.
He has no. It's
altogether.
not a different discussion.
He's a
It
nationalist.
demonstrates-
He's a French Canadian nationalist.
So right there, okay, the priorities he has established for his government and for the province he governs have prevented Quebec from growing its economy and
Yes.
becoming prosperous.
Yes. Okay, so can we
As
move it?
prosperous as it could have been.
But,
Yeah.
right?
And he
but-
and his
yes.
colleagues who have federal representation in the form of the bloc are going to impede the country's ability to move forward by putting their selfish interests ahead of those of Canada.
Everything that you said is possible. Can we just bring it back to the facts on the ground? The facts on the ground are that yesterday, he, in his statement, he congratulated Mark Carney, and he said that we are on the same wavelength. Were his words.
I still want to hear from Dominic, though.
Yeah, businessman to businessman. So I'm saying this is a fact on the ground.
Okay. So, Dominic.
I think our premier, Quebec premier, I do support him. He's made a couple of mistakes. But one of the roadblocks has been the federal immigration out of control. And we're paying, of all the provinces, we're paying the bigger cost because we have the bulk of them. And it's been very, very difficult.
Couldn't disagree with you more.
Yeah.
The immigration issues are national in nature.
Yeah.
However, Quebec has a whole different set of immigration issues that are 100% self-imposed.
Totally agree with that.
Insistence on only accepting
Yeah.
francophones into
Yeah.
the country.
Okay.
No, not okay, Dominic. Let's
But
call it
that-
as it is.
that the,
No.
the illegals that come in are either French,
No,
English.
We have
African-
a shortage of doctors. We have a shortage of nurses. We have a shortage of teachers. We have a
Well,
shortage of professionals.
did you see-
We have language laws that are restrictive. We have a government that has insisted on legislating priorities that are to the detriment of
Okay.
the province's economic well-being.
Did you hear the other day? There's they want to recruit 1,000 nurses. You see the results of those exams? Pitiful.
In what sense?
Well,
Okay, I don't want to get. Can we?
no, but I'm just saying is that what we're letting in doesn't meet standards.
Who's we?
Well, the country.
Who's we?
Well-
I can give you, and I'm one person, I can give you multiple examples of Filipino caregivers
I agree.
who are top notch. Some of them have nursing degrees.
I'm on your
They are
side.
not allowed to practice
I'm on
their
your side.
profession in the province of Quebec
Yeah.
because they can't pass a language test.
So here's the issue. And who right now?
Nowhere else in the country do you see that. Nowhere
I
else.
totally agree
And
with
here
you.
is the issue. And we have a situation now where the current prime minister is totally beholden to Quebec. Quebec, the seats that he won in Quebec are a large reason why he's at 169 seats, just three seats shy of a majority.
Why do you say beholden?
Because no, I think so. I will agree with him, and I'll tell you why. The federal and provincial governments each have defined jurisdictions in terms of where they can enact
Yes.
policies, programs, and so on.
Yes.
The stuff that Carney needs to get done for the good of Canada cannot be done without provincial accord, consent, and buy-in. Cannot.
Correct.
You cannot unilaterally decide federally that you're going to build an east to west or west to east pipeline.
You can if you have federal lands.
Without the provinces buying in. You cannot do it.
If you have federal land, if you have rail lines, that are going through that are federal land and federal rail lines, put a fucking pipe right next to the.
It is not the most efficient way to build those pipelines along railroads.
It isn't, but you can still do it. If they don't want to fucking play ball, you say fuck you and you build your line anyway.
You have to do this in the most efficient way possible. You have to.
And you're subject to the rule of
Time
law.
is not on your side.
But Pat, if there's no other way, and these guys don't want to play ball, you have to have a
There
set
are
of
other
balls at a
options.
certain
There are
point.
other options. Then you stop the pipeline at
Hudson's Bay.
Hudson's Bay,
Yes.
and you use other means through which to carry the gas or oil, so that you can then more effectively offshore it. I mean, there are different options available, none of which is as desirable as building oil and gas pipelines from coast to coast.
What is it about people that don't understand that right now they use rail lines to bring oil, which is not anywhere near as safe as a pipeline? It's like these environmentalists are fucking out of their minds sometimes.
It's the politicians, not the environmentalists, who are right now preventing.
Fair enough, but it's because they're beholden somehow to environmentalists.
I don't think it's because they're beholden. I think it's because they have their own priorities. In Legault's mind, he doesn't want to talk about oil and gas. He wants to talk about hydropower. He wants to be, he's all
He
ears.
can't
if it's-
generate enough.
Oh, but there are ways for him with government funding to invest in
Yeah, which takes 10 years for a program for a dam to be built.
Noran, everything's going to take 10 to 15 years. You're not building a pipeline from east to west in less than 10 years.
You can. In 4 or
I don't
5
think
years,
so.
you can do that.
No, you can make progress. You're not going to build a pipeline from coast to coast in less than 10 years. It's not going to happen.
Ask Elon, he'll do it.
Yeah. And you also have the other end of the country. You also have British Columbia as well, who's very pro-environmental.
Boring, right through.
So it's not just a Quebec. So the environment controversy is not just a Quebec issue. It's also a West issue, and it's BC issues particularly. BC is also very much, along with Quebec, very pro-environmental.
No, but they allowed the pipeline finally to get to the West Coast.
They did.
So now we can
They
ship
did.
some
They
oil
did.
to China.
But they're not going to be open. I don't think BC is going to be now
B-
open arms. Build more
No,
pipelines.
no
on
one
our
is going to be
territory.
open arms because everyone is concerned with their own interests. So every province is going to say, you're asking me to consent or buy into something. What are you going to
What's
do
in it
for
for
me?
me?
Of course.
In exchange for that
Tax
buy-in?
dollars. That's the whole point. It's like, hey, let's do a provincial partnership where you get 20 cents on the dollar of the revenue that's being generated by this pipeline.
Or else we're going to create jobs. I mean, there's so many economic benefits.
Exactly. So
Yes.
so there's how do you fund a social safety net? It's through income, and that income is either taxes or other things, and the other things are going to be based on these pipelines.
Anyway,
And the revenue that you get
So
from
we're spending a lot of time on pipelines.
Yes.
And it is one of the priorities.
I hope so.
I wanted to table another one.
Go for it.
So I think Carney needs to work with the provincial premiers immediately with the goal of tearing down interprovincial trade barriers.
God, yes.
And again, I believe that the biggest obstacle is going to be Quebec, because I think that the
Quebec
other
has.
provinces are going to buy in. No, Quebec has in spirit. They're then going they're then going to invoke language laws as a means of preventing.
I'm saying that Quebec has the most interprovincial barriers. If you look at it,
yeah.
Quebec has put up the most barriers of
agreed.
any other province.
and will maintain them.
So that's going to be exactly a
So
hornet's nest.
that's another huge obstacle to helping Canada.
One person
drive-
can help us with that. One person and one person only can help Canada with that, and his name is Trump. Because if Trump starts again with this 51st fucking state shit,
He is.
that's the only thing that united us as a country and united
No,
us.
there is another option. Unfortunately, it's not immediate, and I think that Quebecers.
Russia?
No, Quebecers need to wrap their heads around this. There is a Quebec provincial election in the fall of 2026, so it's a year and a half away.
Yeah.
These issues matter.
They do.
And if Quebec wants a future, a prosperous future, and not one that's marred in poverty, Quebecers need to wake the hell up.
The kids are a lot smarter.
And they need to not replace this government with a separatist
with the Parti
government,
Québécois government.
but with a government that is going to act in the best interest of Quebecers, but also economically
Yeah.
in the best interest of Canada.
Who would that be?
To be named.
Either liberal or conservative
To
at
be
this
named.
point.
Yeah, the obvious one is
There is no
Liberal Party of
conservative
Quebec.
party in
Liberal.
Quebec to speak.
Not yet.
There won't be.
There is no Liberal Party.
Well,
Yeah, there is.
There is. Of course
There
there
is.
is. They're
dead.
going to be.
They've got to be
They will
centrist.
come back.
They've got to be centrist, yeah.
if they're smart, absolutely, they have a great opportunity here. If they're smart, what they do with this opportunity and how they proceed to organize themselves and what kind of leader they're going to select.
Okay,
that's
so
a
guys,
whole other issue.
If we step back for a second and come back to this, how are we going to get out of the mess that we're in? I believe that if Trump comes back and starts again with the tariffs.
He started. He's doing it.
Hang on. I know that he is.
This week,
But
yesterday.
but he backed off on a bunch of tariffs for the auto
but
industry.
the 51st state is back out there. He's
Yes.
throwing
guys,
that out there.
guys.
So as long as I'm just hopeful. So from my point of view, if Trump continues to push the 51st state agenda, that's going to help Carney bring the premiers of all the provinces together, and the threat of Trump will allow him, hopefully, to do some of the things that you just said.
Naran, you're 100% right. However, hope is not a strategy. None of this conversation and none of the conversations that take place between Carney and whoever else he needs to build coalitions with should be based on what Trump may or may not do. It has to be 100% focused on things that are within our control.
Of course, you're correct. I'm just saying that that's going to be the stimulus required for them to come to the table, because otherwise it's going to be status quo, which has been for the past 100 years.
It cannot be status quo. So
I hope you're right, but I don't-
view, and I think he needs to play hardball. So very simply, and I'm going to stay with Quebec, because I think Quebec is the biggest obstacle to tearing down interprovincial trade barriers and the biggest obstacles to doing what is in Canada's best interest with respect to exploiting our natural resources. The only thing Quebec is truly interested in at this point is any conversation that Carney is going to initiate with respect to building a national power grid that relies in part, and perhaps in large part from a longer term perspective, on hydroelectric power.
Yep.
But it needs to be a combination of hydroelectric, oil, gas, nuclear, wind, solar, all of the above.
Yep.
And that's exactly
Nothing
what
should
their
be off-
platform. That's their platform.
But it's not Quebec's platform.
No. Okay.
Quebec is hydro.
All right, but also remember, we just saw polls, Pat.
So just to finish my thought.
Yeah.
So what I would do if I were Carney is drive those agendas as bloody hard and as bloody fast as I can.
Yeah.
And I would make it clear to Quebec,
You need to do
this is either win-win economically or a win for the country, which is going to be costly for Quebec. And while that may not make you and your constituents happy, that decision entirely lies with you. Yeah. And whether I'm talking to Legault, or I'm talking to the head of PQ, or I'm talking to the head of Liberals, or I'm talking to the Bloc, the conversation is entirely consistent.
Hopefully.
Right.
Hopefully.
And he better have the courage, the political courage, to do that.
Correct.
And Duran, Trump, don't forget, Canada's problems were not created by Trump.
I agree. I'm just saying it's the impetus. It's the thing that can be used by Carney to bring these guys to the table. Because the one time that we all acted as a country was when the 51st state thing
But that
came
was all
out.
bullshit.
It was, but it was the one time. So
Right.
if he continues, it's going to help us be more of a country.
The issues we're discussing here today are going to outlive, and the opportunities are going to outlive Trump.
True.
So I don't give a rat's ass about Donald Trump.
Yeah, and Carney.
I care a whole lot about Canada
Yep.
and the provinces doing what is in this country's best interest,
Yep.
so we can finally build, over the longer term,
Yeah, a real
a strong, vibrant economy
Yep.
that gives us any option that our minds choose to explore.
Yeah, like Norway.
In some respects, yes, like Norway.
Exactly. When they have $1 trillion sovereign fund because they have oil. By the way, they have oil that's offshore drilling.
Yes.
Do you think Norway said, oh, we shouldn't drill offshore because if some oil spills in the ocean, God help us, we shouldn't do it? No. They
No,
fucking went
but-
and they drilled.
but-
And they did it responsibly.
But you have one government to concern yourself with.
Yeah, I know.
You don't have to negotiate every damn
What's the
decision.
population?
but that shouldn't be the reason why we can't do it.
It shouldn't be, but it is.
But it is because that's a choice that we made. We have a confederation, and that's the nature
I
of a
get it.
confederation.
And you're right, Aki. I can't disagree with you. It's got to be negotiated
Right.
properly, and people have to do what's best for the fucking country as opposed to themselves all the time.
So I just also to add to this conversation regarding Quebec, we also see the polls that are promising and are showing that most Quebecers now are absolutely, because of Trump, because of the new economic
More
challenges,
nationalistic
more interested
Canada.
They're interested, and they are. That's why a lot of Quebec seats went to the Liberals. Number
agree.
one,
I agree.
and number two, when it comes to energy, there is now apparently like a fair level of acceptance of a pipeline going through Quebec.
Yep.
How solid that is, I don't know, but that's being expressed.
That's my point about Trump being
Quebec.
pushing the 51st state, because that will allow Quebec and the people of Quebec to think about this thing as it needs to be done versus no, not in my backyard, which is what it's been up until now. So
Do you guys think that there are certain issues that are important enough for the country's long-term well-being that governments should not be making decisions unilaterally, regardless of how strong a mandate they've been given by their constituents, but put back out to the people to have a say.
Plebiscite, as a referendum plebiscite kind of thing. Yeah. To vote for a pipeline across the country.
certain issues. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of government by plebiscite.
For certain issues, that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea at all.
Let's get extreme example. If there's a serious movement toward making this country a part of the United States, of course, that screams.
No, but a
plebiscite.
pipeline, a countrywide pipeline, isn't that something that everyone should vote on?
I think that we have a lot of acceptance. We're heading towards a lot of acceptance for that.
I know, but that's not the answer. That's not the question I asked.
What I don't see the purpose of it. If you have consensus on building another pipeline,
But we don't have consensus. That's
We
the
are.
issue.
I think we are. I think my opinion from what we're seeing in the polls and what
Well,
we're
if
seeing
we
in terms
don't-
of reaction,
if
I think we're getting there.
If the premiers don't all come to the table and agree that this is the right thing to do, and Quebec, as Pat says, comes and says, no, it's not in our best interest. We need to have a French-only pipeline.
I know.
And the oil has to be huile. It can't be oil. So we can't have it because it's English oil. Then what do we do?
The problem is that if you do have provincial resistance, there's they go to the courts. I mean, provincial autonomy.
By the way, the federal government
is
can write
legal
the laws.
factor.
So there's nothing that stops them from writing a law that says, hey, through federal land, we can do whatever the fuck we want.
Notwithstanding.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have a...
I'm not a legal expert. That could be. I'm not sure how viable that would be.
Well,
I think you guys are very optimistic.
No, you say write laws. I think that only applies in certain cases. The bottom line is try and get all the parties required to agree on constitutional changes at this
next
point.
to impossible.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not. There's too much self-interest.
I think you guys are too optimistic. I think the window of opportunity has passed for petroleum.
We're not talking about being either optimistic
Well, why
or
do you say that?
pessimistic.
why do you say that?
We have lost by 2035. There's no more gas.
No, so that's an example
That's
of where
in this
those laws can be revoked. I mean,
Oh,
there's-
okay.
And
Well,
that's in this country. That we're shipping the oil to countries that don't have that law.
Wow.
You think China's not going to need oil after 2035? Come on.
It's a long way to
Look
go.
at India. India is just beginning
they
their
can
expansion.
easily get it in Russia.
Well, that's the point. They don't have enough in Russia to supply all of China. China needs oil. It needs oil from the rest of the fucking world. And now we can actually get it there because we have a pipeline to BC and we can put it into the tankers.
And it's not just oil, natural gas. You
all of it.
don't think that Western Europe would welcome a supply of
Oh, I
natural
agree.
gas
Yeah.
from Canada?
Bring it to the East Coast and see how fast they'll take the LNG lines.
And by the way, I mean, my numbers may be slightly off, but in today's currency, you can sell natural gas to Western European countries at $14 US, whereas it's $4 US when we're selling it south of the border.
Yeah.
There you go. And tell me why you can't put a LNG line for gas to bring it to the East Coast.
Yeah. But it's not, look, guys, the other, we also have to realize, take a step back. I mean, absolutely, our natural resource development is a key part of our economic success. But we also have to do other things in order to have a strong economy. One of the things that I'm, very partial to is up training of our human resources. Make sure that we have the most modern, the most qualified workforce in the world.
Absolutely. Aki, it's not that we only have one thing to do.
That's not retraining your workforce. That's starting in elementary school. And giving every freaking student in this country an aptitude test in order to see at an early age what are their aptitudes. Where should we be encouraging these kids to pursue in terms of academia to begin with, and then ultimately with careers or professions or trades?
Yeah.
I'm talking about
because
Germany does that fantastically.
all we can do right now is adapt our adult workforce in a way that's going to carry them through to retirement age, as opposed to purpose building a workforce that is going to reflect where not only our economy, but the world is moving towards.
You have to do
with artificial intelligence displacing most of the jobs as they're defined today.
Right. I'm not sure.
And reforming your academic educational systems in order to ensure that you're building the right skill set for the future.
Yeah.
Not teaching students who are in university things that are obsolete at the time of
Medieval
the teaching.
history.
Well,
Okay.
not even medieval history. I mean, yes, medieval history, but beyond that.
But the point that I'm making, Pat, is absolutely you instill that in our education system as early as possible, totally. But I'm talking about lifelong learning. Even as professionals, we should be encouraging, our current workforce to be as up to date as possible,
Yeah.
to have every opportunity, to enhance their
Actually,
skill sets.
That's motherhood and apple pie. Of course, no one's going to disagree with you.
We're not doing it. I mean, we don't have
I
an
know.
apprenticeship
So
programs.
Your point is valid. Yes, there's more than only one topic to talk about. Pipelines is important.
It is.
There's like 20 other things to do.
Natural resource development is
Right.
vital
and,
to this
and
country.
interprovincial trade barriers and all
Vital.
this other stuff. There's a few. There's a top 5, top 10 that he's got to
Infrastructure.
all of that stuff.
Recognizing English as the language of business, because it's not just a Canadian
Ça,
issue.
ce tabarnak.
It's not just a Canadian issue. It's a global issue. So can we just put it to rest?
No, over here we can't because Québec,
Well,
il faut
then,
qu'on parle français.
Quebec
puis-
is going to become one of the poorest provinces in this country. Unless it wakes up to the realities of the world.
I think that there's a way to do
Good
it.
to be bilingual, though.
I think
Of course, leverage it as an
we've done
asset.
it.
Exactly.
We have done it in the past where we had
Exactly.
we had a balance. In the past, we did have a balance. At one point, those were our greatest days. I mean, as a province and as a city being in the
Those
city of
days
Montreal,
are gone, my friend.
So we can go. So it's time to. And I think now people. There's a more an open mind when they see the threats, when they see the consequences of being dominated by the Americans and not having enough economic autonomy. That's sinking in.
So
even in Quebec, I'm
So
expecting Quebecers to be
here's an
reasonable.
example,
I hope.
Aki.
So we're cucks.
Here's an example of where I tend to agree with you if we're looking at the Quebec population. But I strongly disagree with you if we look at all the provincial political leaders, with the exception of one, because the Liberals really don't have an assigned leader at this point. They have a placeholder. But every other party in Quebec is led by an individual who doesn't buy into what you just said.
I know, except again, big question mark is the official opposition, which is in a transition mode, and we cannot underestimate
Aki for leadership.
We cannot underestimate how that
The
can
official,
change
the
the
official
landscape here.
opposition in Quebec ranks 4th in terms of popular vote.
They are in rebuild mode. We agree. They're in rebuild mode.
Go for it, Aki. You can do it.
Vive le Canada libre.
Guys, other
Tabarnak.
thoughts on how Canada moves forward?
How Canada moves forward. Cautiously. Hopefully
No,
quickly.
not cautiously. You're going to have to take risks.
No,
You have to have more of an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah. So
I think Canada's time clock is 5 minutes to midnight, and all the things that need to be done, not enough time.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because you're saying things, Dominic, that apply to businesses. They don't apply to countries.
Well,
They don't.
They will.
They don't. You have countries around the world that were over and done with
Yeah.
and somehow have come back into prominence.
Exactly.
You have the contrary, countries that look like they were on top of the world
yeah.
and that have self-destructed,
US of A.
That's what we are.
right? So I don't think with countries that the same applies. I think what you have to recognize is that you may have one or more generations that are going to enjoy a much lower standard of living.
Oh, yeah, that's what we're going to. Yeah, you're right.
Well said. Well said.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, if you
So
were
we got to get our act
if you
together.
were 25 years old, you wouldn't want to be here today.
Okay.
It's tough
All right. So
So if you wouldn't want to be here at 25, why would you want to be here at 65?
because you're stuck.
No, you're not. You're never stuck, Dominic. You know that more than
you're right.
better than anyone
well,
else.
we're considering it, so
Okay.
I think
Okay.
Do you have room for 2 more?
we're considering it.
No, I'm staying.
So I
Who's
think,
adopting
in
me?
Canada?
Someone adopts me, please.
So I think
I'll
that
take it.
I think that we have a track record of being supremely resilient as a country. We've overcome much harder situations than this. I remind you guys, in our lifetime we had federal national soldiers in the streets of our city because we had a high level of terrorism and
Oh,
threat.
come on, Aki.
Well, what? That was minimal? You want to minimize the War Measures Act and the
whoa.
FLQ?
Jesus.
Jackie,
Christ.
I have
giving
a
you an
question for you.
example of-
It's a fine example. Can I ask a question of you?
Yes, please do.
I can't believe
Can
you
you
said
can you
that.
give us a profile of the people who were at the root of that terrorism?
Again, of course, ultra extreme Quebec nationalists, separatists.
Okay.
Right.
Who's
But
running
we've
the
evolved-
government now?
But we evolved from that.
A couple of months.
We evolved from
Go
that.
Habs, go!
We evolved
Allez,
from that.
Canadiens, allez!
We evolved from that. In the 1990s, Canada was
We evolved?
In the 1990s,
We devolved.
Canada was it was determined that Canada was on the verge because of our out of control debt. We were on the verge of becoming a developing world country. We evolved from that. We dealt with that issue.
And Aki, may I ask once again,
Oh my God. Can't
What?
believe-
Oh my God! What am I saying? Citing that you
government-
disagree with?
Aki,
Our
what?
debt is way more than it
No,
was.
it wasn't. We're 60%.
Aki.
If you look at history, our debt, our ratio was 60% of our GDP.
Aki, can you stop long enough to entertain a question and then you can speak again? Which government got us out of those doldrums in the 1990s?
Exactly.
The Liberals.
Did they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Jean Chrétien, liberal party, a centrist, sensible liberal party, and I think this is the best hope that we have. We have a government now that is in that mold. This is why I'm optimistic.
Vive le Québec libre.
Exactly.
I revoke the adoption.
Oh, shit. Mi scusi.
You talk nonsense, no room in my family for you.
I'll give you mine.
So
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Naran, final thoughts.
God help us. I
No.
hope
No.
I hope he's super successful.
Stop with your hope.
Well, I have
Don't be
nothing
hopeful.
left.
No.
Well, there's no strategy.
Tell him what to do.
I didn't vote for the fucker.
Tell them what to do.
Tell him what to do. Get those fucking pipelines in. Get your natural resources. Get your fucking provincial trade barriers down. Do the shit you're supposed to fucking do and get us back to an economic wellness track.
And stop the divisiveness.
Yes.
I think reality will overwhelm Carney.
What does that mean?
Reality.
But what about reality is going to overwhelm him?
Because of all the things that need to be done.
Yeah.
It's going to be too much.
See, that's one area where I actually have confidence. I think that and again, I'm not a Carney fan, but I believe that he's an individual who, contrary to most politicians, because I don't see him as a politician, has the ability to prioritize and has the ability to multitask and has the ability to look at things from a more rational and business-oriented viewpoint.
So you're optimistic.
I'm not optimistic and I'm not confident. I'm a realist. But I do believe that if he can garner the necessary support, and that's a big if, primarily because I think Quebec is going to stand in his way, I do believe that Canada can make some significant progress. And I would say that one of the important things is, regardless of what your political ideology is, regardless of who you voted for in the recent election, we as Canadians need to put every ounce of our fiber behind priorities that are going to lead to better outcomes for all Canadians. Yeah. And this is where I'd like to see him set the priorities. What is in the best interest of Canada?
Good luck with that.
Not of the
Agree.
I hope so.
Socially leaning crowd that he's had to appease and cater to, and that's got to be over and done with. Govern from the center.
That's easier said than done.
I agree, but govern from the center.
Yeah, well.
Aki, what do you think?
I think that I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. My starting point is, remember how hard it is for this country to be a country. We are a geopolitical miracle.
Trump was right.
Geopolitical miracle. Trump is wrong because we have a history of being a sovereign country, and we've been able to rise above, being sucked into the American federation. So that's an incredible achievement. It requires a lot of skill. It requires significant high wire acts, but we've been able to do it up to now. Now we were really condemning the Justin Trudeau for his CV because he was a lowly teacher and he knew nothing
for what he did.
We also
Fuck his CV. I don't give a shit about his CV.
People condemned him also because he didn't
People
have...
did. I don't give a shit
Right,
about what
you
he
did.
did.
Good. You're more progressive. Wonderful. Love to hear that from you. But we have now
My
a
pronouns
leader.
are fuck and you.
We have a prime minister now who has exactly the resume for the mission at hand. And we have all the opportunities, all the tools at our disposal to do this right. And I think we're going to do it right.
Good. I hope you're right.
Yes, I would differ with you because I don't think Canada's ever faced the challenge it currently faces. Because
Not even close.
historically, we have been able to artificially maintain, even through more turbulent times, an artificially high standard of living. Because the one thing we could always depend on was a trading partner to the south of our borders,
Sugar daddy.
right? That ensured our economic well-being.
Canada's on OnlyFans.
Now we have to be entirely self-reliant in that regard. And that's a challenge we've never faced in our history,
Yeah.
and one which is formidable. And let's see whether or not we as Canadians can garner all the necessary strength in order to move forward in a way that's constructive and positive.
Overwhelming.
I
hope so.
Yeah, I just want to say, I just want to say that I think that we played that hand the best that we could. We gave ourselves a decent country with a decent quality of life. That was the hand that was dealt to us geographically. We played it well. So I'm optimistic that we have a good base to build on.
Well, let's see.
That's it.
Anyway,
what
we'll be
happens.
revisiting this
Exactly.
Yes.
over the coming months and years.
And to all of our U.S. Listeners and viewers, apologies for the Canada. Canada stuff.
No apologies.
It matters.
Fuck that. No,
It matters.
no. We are an important country.
Hey,
We
by
have
the
an
way,
important message.
to our American viewers and listeners, can we please have our Stanley Cup back?
Yeah. Hallelujah.
On that note, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Guys, always a blast. Look forward to
you.
doing it again next week.
Thanks.
Be well, Romeos.